I thought,
Hi.
I'll tell you, this is the story of my life. No one looks at my messages. No one looks at my posts. And everyone says you're doing all this work. The Zoom
No,
link
I
was
didn't
on
see
that
a link
message.
on your. I didn't see a link on your post. It
No,
was
no, in your
the
message.
LinkedIn.
It was in your
Sorry.
message, LinkedIn message. It's there. I confirmed. So now I'm going to share that in message otherwise. This happens.
Oh
I've
dear.
had this before also. Every time just before the session, someone will send me a message and I have to tell them just one step before this, you could have had a look. That's normal. It's normal. That's the story of my life. I keep telling people all these.
Interesting.
It's
Is
there,
it?
right there, just before your last messages that you did yesterday. I mean,
Yeah.
just before that post that I sent you, just over that, just over that.
Okay. I thought
Yeah,
that was the. I thought that was a Zoom link to our call. Oh
yeah.
well.
So that's not an issue, But are you okay if I rename you?
Yes.
I'll do that. But I have written India and US in front of your name. I hope that's all right with you. In your
Well, it is appropriate. My heart and soul are in India, and my body is in the US.
and today it's the heart, soul, and spirituality one. So no, I tell you what I do. What I've been doing is that, say a person is a citizen of a place and lives somewhere else. So I put both the countries because you do bring in that perspective. You bring in both the aspects. If you're living in a place and you're a resident there, definitely the culture and everything around it definitely is an important aspect. So that's why I put
Of
both the
course.
countries.
Yeah. There is no. I am influenced by both my heart, my soul, and my body.
Exactly. and the and
Yeah.
the other thing is that I mean, of course, I don't ask people. I didn't send you a message also because your LinkedIn profile said the US, and I know you have India connection, so that's why I didn't even ask you. I just put it that. Good or bad,
Yeah.
I don't
Thank
know.
you. Exactly. Yeah. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes, but you'll have to look the way I wanted to go about it, and I have in most sessions is that just about yourself. One is, of course, in terms of work, yes, but just a matter of your growing up. And I've noticed, and you would also notice that that aspect definitely brings in the spirituality and how you bring in into your work, your heart, soul, and everything. So, as much as you want to tell us, then we take it from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No. Of course. I love it. I mean, I do appreciate your mission to get to know the individual and your mission to reach out and touch the stories of the mediator. Lovely. It's
Because
only through stories that we learn and we connect, right?
yeah, and the mediators for some reason has got lost in the entire process of promoting mediation. That's what I feel.
True. Yeah, I guess we do get focused on the mission ahead and we forget the self.
Exactly. And I always keep saying that I just found out recently that the mediator is required for the mediation. I didn't know that before.
You bet. Let's not forget him or her,
Yeah,
right?
I think maybe they're required. Maybe somewhere in the process. So Tara,
Yeah.
please, as much as you want to tell us about yourself, whatever you want to tell us about yourself.
About myself. Well, where do I begin?
That's the point. That's the important point where you begin.
I almost feel like I'm starting a therapy session here. But well, I'll start with how I came to mediation, if that's a good place to start. There is a history before that as well, but well, I come from a family of lawyers. My grandfather was a judge of the Supreme Court of India, and my mother was a practicing lawyer. And I think I was one of those kids in sixth grade knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. Um, and of course, I went to law school. I was very motivated by the social justice aspect of the law, and I became a human rights lawyer. I moved to the US and I practiced in human rights law for many years. And then in 2011, decided to move back to Bangalore. And it was for personal reasons. There was a tough situation that our family had faced. And that motivated me to move back to Bangalore. And I was trying to find my next steps when I saw my mother was very, very deeply involved in mediation. In the early 2000s, she had been invited by the Karnataka High Court to start the Mediation Center. When the Chief Justice approached her about mediation, she had no idea what it was, but decided to go with what was asked of her, but just got completely bitten by that mediation bug. For having been a lawyer for 20 years at that point of time, she suddenly saw the power of a process to bring resolution, and was wowed by it. So I saw her getting more and more into mediation. I also saw how, through the personal tragedy that our family had experienced, the healing that she got in mediation, it was amazing how very quickly she was able to get back into her work, which through a situation that she was under would not have been possible if her work did not bring immense meaning to her. Since I was at that stage where I just moved, I had 3 little children at that point of time, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I kind of went into her office and decided to help her get an understanding of what she was doing. And lo and behold, I guess that bug bit me too. and the more I try and understand this space, the more I spend time in this space, it's pretty evident to me that this resonates in a very, very deep way. It's not just an intellectual engagement. It is a spiritual engagement. It is a personal engagement. So I guess a very appropriate conversation to talk about today in terms of why mediation.
Exactly. It's all connected. It's all connected. But I'll tell you, this is that series that I do, Evolution of a Mediator. The idea was that, look, mediators are not made in 40-hour factories. There's lots that goes into it. So as part of that, I do take people through them growing up and the value systems they're brought up in, their grandparents, their influence, the parents' influence. So, I mean, I just wanted to touch upon just a little bit if you want to, because obviously, I mean, those are series which, of course, take hours to go through. But why I'm doing that is because there is that's an important aspect. Because when you talk about spirituality and you talk about just that, the fact that you said that whole thing resonated with you, it resonated with you, mediation, because all those factors were there. So that is why I just want to know, get to know how those factors came into you, because those are important. I mean, then we'll take it from there in terms of course, your understanding of them. So something you want to take us a little bit of your growing up, maybe?
I mean, I think growing up, it was definitely a value-based upbringing, a strong understanding of what is right, what is wrong, and a clear understanding of the path and the choices that a person must make, a child must make, and a young adult must make to be a respectful citizen in society. And I give full credit to my family for inculcating that very, very strongly in me as a child. I think as mediation stepped into our lives, the foundation of having the strong rights and wrongs was well superseded by the grays of life, which is where I think mediation steps in. And there is an ability to now truly appreciate that not everything is black and white. It's not as easy as right and wrong. He is good, he is bad. This was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. There are a certain set that is very clearly right and wrong, but there is also plenty that's gray. And the need of the hour is to be able to understand why it is gray. And I'm very grateful for our introduction to mediation, for encouraging that process of thinking and that way of living. Because I think otherwise it's very, it would have been a far stronger right-wrong framework that we operated in, just because we came from a strong system of values, and our training and our work. My family history was about that form of thinking.
Mhm. So that's okay. So that's important, and you'll be able to appreciate and understand those gray areas. And as you go along, to be able to appreciate people and their points of view, maybe all that aspect also. So, but in terms of heart, soul, spirituality, now, what would you understand from them? What do you, and then we'll get into how you think in terms of the process, in terms of the mediator, the parties, the mediation process. So, whatever. I mean, totally your interpretation, your thought process.
Yeah, no, as I told you, Vikram, this is a, I'm a novice in this space. I'm still trying to figure out what is my heart, where is my soul, and what is my body. So it's a process of great exploration. And I mean, and of course, a very, very big topic. But where is my head at this point of time on this topic? That it's all completely interrelated, that there is no separation. How my body feels to a large extent is where my heart is. The state of my soul is a state of mind. So the interconnectedness or the interrelationality between these aspects of one's being is 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 something that I am more and more convinced by. I'm still in the very early stage of trying to figure out how one feeds into the other, and figuring out how I strengthen each part of my being so that the whole is in a better place. So yeah, the clear what I eat is dependent on how I feel. How I feel influences how I think, and so the relationship of it. I'm still in the process, or I'm still very early in that journey of trying to figure out the relationship between each of these aspects of my life, and how it yields to the whole that I am.
Maybe what you could do is maybe look at it from the perspective of your mother and look at her and then see those elements. Maybe you'll be able to bring out more on that, because maybe from your end, the words might not be there. It's all there. The package is all there. Maybe the words might not be there, but if you're looking at her and looking at these elements,
Oh,
would that be easier?
if we were in a private forum, probably I would feel more secure to do that. But I think it's unfair for me to not unfair, rather, to do an analysis on my poor mother, who, as you can imagine, I work with on a personal level. She's my mother, and everyone knows that that one has a complex relationship with your mother. And I have the benefit of not only calling her Ma, but she's also my business partner. So it's an interesting relationship that the two of us have. Actually, a beautiful one that the two of us have. But I'd rather not analyze it out.
No, but I was just trying to make it easier in the sense, because sometimes what happens is that going into the self definitely sometimes is difficult because you haven't looked at. Sometimes those words are not there. I mean, there is a feeling, but you to put words next to it might not be possible. But when you look at someone else and you look at the process from that person's perspective, because definitely you've seen that, and her bringing in her heart. I was just trying to look at it that maybe the words might come out easier when you look at it
Yeah,
in
no,
that
but I
aspect.
can definitely share that watching her journey in this process has greatly underscored the relationship between the two. I mean, especially after experiencing her process of healing, the and through that process of healing, her ability to be a stronger mediator, her ability to relate to the world from a different place, less judgmental, her ability to be far more empathetic, her ability to truly listen to people was greatly enhanced through the experiences that she went through in her life. And that has been a huge learning experience for me, to be able to watch that process of her evolution from a lawyer, a black and white thinking lawyer, to a mediator who sees the world and interacts with the world a little bit differently.
Yeah, because if you get time, please watch some of those the episodes of Evolution of a Mediator, and you will notice this with a lot of people, that it is some experience which has changed their whole way of looking at dispute resolution and moving from litigation to mediation. So some interesting things come out from that, because definitely those things, that impact that they have, start looking at the world differently. So the spiritual journey, I think on the spiritual journey, these are maybe very important milestones. Maybe something there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think through this process, it is clear that the time that I spend when I get the chance, quietening my mind and reflecting on the Bible, on the Gita, whatever my reflection is. So oftentimes those understandings I'm able to bring into a mediation, and to that extent, the close relationship between personal growth and professional growth that this space offers is truly special. Um, as I work on building my listening skills, as I work on trying to understand where my parties are coming from, what is the story behind them, why are they responding the way they are responding, as I train myself to notice how I am responding in these situations. These are skills that I'm able to bring back to being a mother, to being a spouse. And to that extent, these are human values. And as I reflect back, when we are in law school and they teach us what it is to be a dispute resolver, it is so skewed, and it's such a singular focus on what it is to be a dispute resolver. What is happening in the mind of your client? Why is your client in this situation? These are not aspects that we are trained in at all. The psychology, the spirit, the being behind your client is not an aspect that we touch on at all. And that's baffling to me, especially as we are in this space and we see that the position that the parties take, that property is mine because my father willed it to me, is just a tip of the story, when so much more lies beneath it. And how our whole education system is not wired to even explore a tenth of what that real dispute is about. It's mind-blowing to me that our system is structured in such a superficial way.
So on that, Tara, what's happening is that for me, colonization was a major factor for that aspect of coming out in terms of dispute resolution, being courts, lawyers, and that aspect of it. So I'm going to do a symposium that's in August on colonization, decolonization, and mediation, because for me it was decolonization and mediation. Today there was a session with Sarah from Australia. She said keep both the words, colonization, decolonization, and mediation. So that'll come up because this is an important aspect that I think has changed the way dispute resolution happens all over the world, because colonization has been a major factor. So the traditional methods, or just the way families or communities did went through dispute resolution, I think the whole concept changed. So what you're saying is really important, that aspect would have been an important aspect, but then it all changed. So that conditioning of the mind over hundreds of years, so we'll have to go back into that and see how we can reverse that part. So I think I feel that's an important part.
Yeah, I mean, we did. So these are not systems that are new to us, and we can blame colonization or whatever else we want to. Of course, these have had impacts to where we are today. But the fact is that these were systems that were very inherent in our culture up until quite recently. as my mom and I discuss, after she came into mediation, she realized that her grandfather was actually a mediator in the community. She remembers as a child, when visiting her grandparents' home, every few days her grandfather would be sitting outside on the under the mango tree, and there were a whole bunch of people hanging around him. In all likelihood, what he was doing was mediating. There were systems and flexible cultural systems in place that allowed for the inevitable result of human interaction, which is differences. A healthy part of human interaction, differences. The reason why we've evolved as a species is because we had the ability to opine and think differently and express differences. But we did have systems in place to be able to manage those differences effectively. But somehow along the way, we let go of those inherent systems, and allowed ourselves to only grow in the management of one way of resolving disputes, which is a very essential way to resolve disputes, which is an effective way to resolve disputes. But the problem is that became the only way to do it, and therefore we are in the situation that we are today, and we live in the polarized country that we are in, or the
Yeah.
world that we are in.
I think the fact is that, of course, there are lots of reasons. I said colonization is one part. Of course, the way communities maybe changed, the way maybe urbanization changed things, and maybe just the way society in general influences from wherever or whatever happened, things changed. But I mean, what you said about the way traditionally it was done that way. So I did a symposium last year on mediation in our culture and tradition. So this was the theme. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so mediation as
Exactly.
I took the definition from the Singapore Convention because that's one definition we have today. So I took
Yeah,
from there and I said that definition actually is something that's been part of our culture. And this
exactly.
aspect, yeah, people around the world may not be familiar with the word, but they're familiar with the process. And that's what I want to connect them with, something
Yeah.
that they already know instead
Yeah,
of,
this is not new to us. It's part of our DNA. We've done it for centuries, especially as Indians. This is familiar to our culture. It's about getting back to those roots. It's not something that the West is bringing to us. Which again, we face that pushback. Well, what is this practice that the Americans are bringing? No, this has been part of our culture. We've done this for centuries. We forgot it in one kind of a way, and now we're being reminded to get back to our roots. I think that's brilliant that you had a whole episode around that. I mean,
episode. This was a symposium with almost
series.
hundreds,
Okay.
100 speakers,
Oh
97
wow,
speakers,
amazing.
97 speakers, and
Okay.
imagine from more than 40 countries to bring this
Lovely.
aspect down, because I felt that, look, if you are connecting people to a very technical word or technical process, you want to keep them, maybe will they accept it? Because now, like I said, decolonization, when you're trying to condition, change that conditioning. On top of it, you come out telling them there is some process which you are bringing in. So instead, connect them with something that they're familiar with. And it's not easy, Tara. Let me tell you, it's not easy, because there was some teachers from this rural part of India, some from Bihar in West Champaran. So I started. They'd already been, mediation had been discussed with them. Someone had done that. So then that discussion started. For some reason, that panchayat and mediation connection goes around whenever mediation has to be discussed. I think that's even put down in the Supreme Court MCPC manual also. So that discussion started that about panchayat. So they of course tell you that the panchayat takes a decision and they actually force us to implement that decision. So I said, look, that's not mediation. So first of all, that had to be taken off. First of explaining what mediation is and not connecting it with panchayat, because the kind of panchayat that they have, they actually thrash people. First of all, they tell you what to do and they thrash you to implement that. So that's not media. Get that out. Then this discussion started about people who do that. Once they understood what the process was, and names came out. There are people there, like you just said, like your grandfather. There are people like that. All they still exist. I mean, you could not remove that part. Whatever happened, so they're all there. So connect them with that, and then they came out with those names and how the process is done, and then they connected with the process.
Exactly. So we did inherently have the informal respected village elder. right, as part of our communities. In the recent past, that village elder got replaced by the powerful elder in in the community. And that's when the problem started happening, right? So that's the panchayat system today is different from what it was originally conceived to be. And yeah, the panchayat doesn't practice mediation as we espouse mediation to be today. But inherently, that was part of the system. That was the rationale behind having these kind of systems in our communities. So well, to that extent, yes, the decolonization or colonization and the advent of the court systems have had a part to play, but it's also our ways of life, right? We are not living our lives in a mindful, aware way. The whole ability for us to pause, to understand, to reflect, not only the other, but ourselves. We're so focused on the other. We have no idea what's happening within us, right? And that whole practice again has gone. Who gets up every morning and spends some time in reflection and prayer? That whole way of living has gone. And the impacts of that is also what we are seeing. The impact of our reactionary measures of stress and violent reactions is also a byproduct of the way people live today. And the ability to pause, to understand, why is he doing what he's doing? Where is he coming from? What have I done to contribute to it? What could I do differently? We were not necessarily operating in those frameworks that have resulted in these situations.
There was one point of discussion that has come up, and I've also discussed it earlier, is that as communities broke up, and there was no sense of ownership towards the community, I think that also changed the way people looked at each other, because there is something, whether it's the social pressure, maybe it's not a bad thing. Some people feel that social pressure is a bad thing, but I think that sometimes in these aspects, to be able to just collaborate, or just the fact to understand, like you said, understand the other person, there should be some connection somewhere. I mean, to create that connection, I think though we maybe disconnected from that part. I don't know, maybe that's something which we need to explore, I think.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think it's a true privilege, and I thank my mom for that, for introducing me into a space that actually does connect on so many levels. I actually, in one kind of a way, come to mediation from the space of human rights. I started my career as a very, very passionate human rights lawyer. And I truly believe that there is an aspect to my human rights passion that I bring to my mediation work. Not just the passion, but because of the interrelatedness of it. I think it's almost a right for human beings to be able to live differently, and to be able to live differently this way.
So that I think you have to tell us more about why you were passionate about that. Maybe we'll get to know more about these elements that we are talking about from there. So the passion towards human rights and the practice of law towards that, a little bit about that background. Where did that come
Well, as I
from?
told you, I grew up listening to conversations on the law between my grandfather and my mother. It was fascinating listening into those conversations. So that aspect came to me very early, and it growing up in that very clear value based, strong values that were inculcated to us as children. Um, Together, just the space of how do I as an individual work towards bringing more justice to the world, and the space of social and economic rights spoke very, very deeply to me. I did some very fun stuff in law school. It was with the Human Rights Commission for a while. I worked with under trial lawyers, under trial prisoners for a while, set up mediation clinics, worked with the rights of women, did all of that stuff. Came to the US, did my master's in human rights law, worked with the UN for some time, worked with international human rights organizations. And I did realize that at some point, it was getting exhausting to work in the framework of what should be, right? The endeavor as a human rights lawyer is, this is not right, this is how it should be. And you work and you work and you work, and there's very little that you see as progress, as change. So I think I did get a little tired. And then when life went upside down and it was time to pause, and this came my way, and I just experimented with it, mediation, I noticed that I absolutely loved being in the space of, let's work with what is and see how we can work within the situation to get them to a different place. And the ability to actually influence changing the is through this methodology was also extremely satisfying. And today, I don't know, again, because of the way my thinking has changed through my experience of mediation, I'm not able to bring that same passion to what should be in one kind of a way. I find myself staying a lot more with, let's understand what this is, move judgment as much as possible. Again, this is all very easy theoretically. To do it practically is far more challenging. But at least practically to be able to engage with the thought process of try and see what the situation is, why the situation is, and from this framework, how do we find a solution, is to me deeply satisfying. It might not be the perfect solution from an external mandate, but when the parties themselves are able to find solutions that are workable for them, it's a very fulfilling, satisfying space to enter. So yeah, to some extent, I think that's also been a part of the growing journey for me.
Because why this was important was to tell us that you come from the heart. So the heart part of it has been taken care of, that the heart was part of what you were doing earlier as a human rights lawyer, and that heart you bring in. So now we have to get to the soul, or get to
Yeah,
the
I do.
spirituality.
The problem is I come too much with the heart. My husband keeps saying at some point in time the left brain has to kick in.
No, it's good.
The heart invests very quickly and deeply and strongly.
Yeah, no, it's important. I think that the heart is really important. Everything else can fall around it, but I think that to bring that in, I think is important, because I said this, the symposium, one from the perspective of the mediator, then the parties, and then the process, and connecting all of them. Look, I know I don't want to push it in any direction. It's definitely what you people bring in, and then we can discuss it at the end of the symposium on the 29th. I've kept a session for learnings and key takeaways. When we'll to do that, but right now I don't want to take it in any direction. But this was the broad framework. So
Nice.
Tara comes with all this. Now moving to the process and the way you look at it in terms of the parties and the process, something on that, have you maybe thought about it, or something that you think we need to discuss, some thoughts?
I mean, I think to me, again, being part of this process, and I've shared this earlier, is the trying to build that skill to see people for who they are and why they are in the situation that they are in, to remove that piece of judgment of casting the right and the wrong on them. This is what they should have done. This is what they should not have done. And it's fascinating how very quickly the mind does move into that framework, right? It's very easy to view your parties from your lens. And the ability to train myself, at least to be aware that I'm moving in that space, and then to train myself to move away from that space is a life skill to me. So it's a tough journey. It's hard work, falling down more than moving forward many a times. But I actually do truly love the philosophy of seeing people through that lens. How do I understand why this brother hates his older brother as much as he does? Why is he saying that the company is being mismanaged because he's a selfish, a proud man. And training myself to try and understand where he's coming from, training myself to see why the other brother sees his younger brother as entitled, as elitist, as spoiled, and moving from those frameworks has been an incredible lesson of personal growth for me. So yeah, my engagement with parties is very different. Well, up until then, right, when a client walked into your room, you thought of your client differently. How do you see the goodness, the right of your client? And then the second part of the equation is to bash the other side up, to be able to make him the bad guy and to show the world that he is a bad guy. That framework doesn't really appeal to me anymore. So I see parties a little bit differently.
And reaching their heart and soul, do you think that aspect of it is important and as part of the process?
Oh yeah, it's all about reaching the heart and soul, right? I love the greeting of, my soul benefited from knowing your soul. My soul benefited from this conversation with you. To be able to engage with parties at that level, as opposed to just that handshake. Essentially, that's what the mediator is trying to do. The magic of mediation happens with that. And what a place to get to, right? If we, through our profession, are training ourselves to connect with people that way, and we're building that muscle for ourselves, amazing. Those are if the world was filled with mediators, in one kind of a way, I think we'd be in a better world.
Exactly. And that's why, look, these elements, why I'm trying to bring them out is because maybe there is a lack of understanding about the process and about mediators and how they bring in these. Because without even talking about it, these are things which are brought in. I mean, the way I look at mediation, I'm sure there are various ways that it is practiced. I'm not saying that deal making is not happening, and maybe that's what parties need. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into whether these elements still make a part of it or not. We're still discussing. So we
Although, I
definitely.
mean, at the end of the day, parties want solutions. They want to be
Yeah.
able to strike that deal, but it's in the how of it, right? And that deal is a more sustainable deal when there is that soul to soul connection that potentially could have been made. So of course, the end result of a mediation is critical, but equal efforts and emphasis needs to be placed on the ability to create those connections to get to that result. And that's critically important to me as a mediator. It's not only about the resolution, it is about how we got to resolution that probably is more important than the resolution itself. Because again, enough times I think we've seen that maybe it doesn't end in a deal at the end of that day, but if the parties are able to leave that mediation room having felt understood, at least by the mediator, having felt a strong sense of being understood by the mediator, if the party is able to create some kind of connection with the other side, having been able to understand that other side as more than just a partner in a deal, but as a human being, if that perspective has been brought in, I truly believe that even if it did not end in a result on a deal on that mediation table, it does create a net positive that alters the way they interact with each other in the future.
An interesting thing that came up from Sarah's session, which was in Australia, that from mediation table and mediation room, we moved to mediation tree. It can be a mediation tree also, because she does work with indigenous communities. So now the idea was that let's expand this whole thing, because definitely it's an informal process, and a tree is also somewhere where mediation can happen. So that's an interesting that came up. But in terms of deal making, what I'm saying is that, look, in evolution of a mediator, there was Danny Weinstein, and he said, "Oh, I'm not a spiritual person." And it's, in terms of spirituality, but I felt that he maybe, because he is, but sometimes people don't, from their end, can't put words to that aspect that they are, or maybe themselves they don't even look at it, and someone from outside can look in. But I'm sure the spirituality aspect still comes in, even if it's deal making or in the way they conduct it in a different way. Maybe his processes, because someone from someone, a Weinstein Jams fellow, was talking about the way certain jams mediators do function, but I still feel that maybe there is still a connect somewhere. I mean, it's not
Oh
that
man, Danny
spirituality goes out.
Weinstein is not a spiritual person. He is such an amazingly spiritual person.
Yeah,
His ability to connect is just phenomenal. Oh,
exactly. You have to tell him this. You
so
have to tell him this because this is exactly what he said. I am not. So I said,
maybe
uh,
he's not a religious guy who gets up every morning and does his pujas, but he's such a deeply spiritual man. When you talk to him, he has an amazing ability to make you feel like he gets you, and his
exactly.
ability to do that with when I spoke to Danny and met with him, I was just so struck that here I am, a young woman, but the interest with which he came to understand what I had to say was amazing. It was so humbling. And that's a truly spiritual person. And whether it is me or whether he is dealing with the CEO of Facebook, he comes with that same kind of interest. And that's only possible by a truly spiritual man. So he's an amazingly evolved being.
Okay, one, I of course I'll try and take this clip out or I'll send this to him as it is. But the main thing is that when part 3 of his evolution of a mediator has to happen, it was supposed to happen last Saturday, but there was some family emergency. But at that point of time, please come in and tell him this. It's really important because that's exactly what I was trying to tell him, because things some people don't understand, because first of all, like you said, it's not maybe religious. Some people connect spirituality with religion, but not, I mean, it's not connected. And maybe connected for some people. I'm not saying people don't, but that's what I think needs to be also discussed. So for you, Tara, what is spirituality?
Ooh. Vikram, you don't ask small questions, do you? And I don't know if I have an answer for you. As I told you, I have a long way to go and much to learn on this. But what is spirituality to me? To me, the understanding that there is a much bigger and greater force that exists, that so much is beyond my intellect and led by this spirit that exists within me, that's connected to the larger divine force. And it's the journey of being able to establish that connection between the spirit that's existent within me, within you, within every human being, to be able to identify with each other and to connect to our creator, is the journey that I am on. And to me, that is spirituality. The growth of my spirit and my ability to connect to the outside spirit, not to the outside, to the divine spirit, that is within me, is spirituality to me. And yeah, I'm probably just articulating it in a terrible way, because I am unable to articulate it.
That's
It's a
perfect. Perfect.
feeling.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
perfect.
feeling of where I want to go, and it's through that development that I find my balance, that I find my purpose, that I find my center. And all I know is that it's a it's a lifelong endeavor. I I've come some way, but I have an extremely long way to go.
But then bringing this into mediation, and maybe because that's what we really would want to maybe bring out through the symposium, this aspect of what you just said, exactly what you just said, and then that connecting people, connecting parties into whatever it might be, how the mediator does it, what happens. So have you thought about that part?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the practice can be spiritual when those moments are achieved, right? When as a mediator, I am able to go a little bit lower, a little bit deeper into understanding who this person is and why she is in her situation, where I am able to make my party feel understood and heard. There is a spiritual growth that happens there. Um, if you look at it just from the spiritual aspect of it, because my ability to do that depends on my centering. It depends on my balance. It depends on my ability to understand and ask those questions that come from a place of understanding as opposed to inquisitioning, right? How do I ask that question? I've spent so many hours observing, people like Bruce and Dana and Howard and these amazing mediators out here who have that ability to ask the question in a way that makes you feel understood, that makes you feel like they really want to know what is going on with you, as opposed to asking that same question in a way that makes you feel targeted, that makes you feel cornered. The same question asked in a way that can make you feel so completely different is evolution to me, is spiritual growth and journey to me. So in the practice, the ability to make that connection with my parties, the ability to experience moments of unveiling that parties in conflict could potentially reach. Amazing spiritual moments, right? Where there is that aha of, oh, I'm seeing this differently. I am responding to this differently. I'm seeing, I can understand why he did what he did. And the possibilities of that comes with this process is, again, huge spiritual moments to me. And I don't believe there's any other dispute resolution process out there that offers this, right? And to that extent, if people only got to realize that it invokes the better in them, it invokes the evolved being in them, and therefore engage with this process. There are processes that invoke the better in you, and there are processes that invoke the baseness in you. This is the process that actually evokes the better in you. So give yourself the chance to experience yourself in a different way, is what mediation offers me, or offers the world, actually.
Yeah. And that's really important. I mean, this is something, and because of that, I'll tell you, maybe sometimes mediation and mediators are not valued so much because these aspects, maybe you can't put a value to. How do you put a value to someone's spirituality? I mean, how do you do it? So I think that's why maybe it is not valued the way I think it should be. And mediators should be valued. The whole idea of promoting mediators and putting mediators out there is that they're special people, and people should value them for what they are, because these, or are these values in society itself not valued? These, so maybe the things have changed that way. So to bring that aspect out, I think that's also what I want to do, and this symposium is one part of that. So to get that word out also. I don't know what you think about that.
No, absolutely. Vikram, give me a second. It seems like my computer is not plugged in. Just a second.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think to some extent there is the we in the pursuit of living life, we sometimes it's easy actually to forget what these I would like to term higher ideals and virtues are. But I think what I'm seeing is that there is an increased recognition that there needs to be a change to the status quo. The way we've been doing things is not necessarily working for a great many people. And I'm deeply encouraged, especially through the interns that we work with, the number of law students who come in after 2 years of law school saying, this is not why I joined law school, to understand the court process and what the court process is about. I joined law school for a different set of reasons, and mediation makes complete sense to me. The number of young people who are looking for something different and seeing that different in these processes, in dialogue, in building skill to make connect, to understand, to ask the right whys, is hugely exciting and encouraging. So I do believe that there is a growing group that is seeing the value of these processes, that is understanding that there is a need for a change in the current mode of operation. And I truly believe that this muscle that we are seeking to build, the muscle of dialogue, the muscle of collaboration, the muscle of understanding, is something that's going to grow. And with that is just going to gain momentum to adopt and approach our world a little bit differently.
So basically, there is a right time for everything. So maybe now is the right time to take it forward, because not that mediation has not been discussed, it's been discussed. Maybe, like you said, people, the thought process is changing. The younger lot is looking at things differently, and maybe that way things will go in that direction.
Absolutely. Like, you know, when we started our center, and I've shared the story so many times, when we started our center, nobody knew what mediation was. We had people coming into our office just to figure out what time our next meditation class was. We've had the government being completely unaware of what mediation was when we wrote out to the government after Justice Thakur's outbreak on just the load that our judiciary is under, just the inability of our judges to be able to keep up despite the incredible hours that they are putting in, and many of them trying their very best. That immense sense of frustration with this system is broken, we got to do something else. We wrote out a letter talking about mediation, and the government had no clue what mediation was. Today we're talking about a bill for mediation. I mean, I really think that that as a larger community, we realize that we need to do something that's differently. And this potentially could be that slightly different thing. But we got to make sure that when we start doing this differently, we have a set of people who understand the true values of this process, are able to bring themselves as strong representatives of a process, where they understand the process, are able to give the right experience to our community, so that the lived experience of mediation is what it should be.
Yeah. But interesting, you said mediation and meditation, people understanding that there is a group, a WhatsApp group of mediators in India. There's a group called Ambassadors of Mediation. So someone today put a post there. J. Krishnamurthy was speaking about meditation, and someone read, just replace meditation with mediation. It makes total sense. Maybe I'll send that to you. I don't want to, it's a long thing that J. Krishnamurthy said about meditation. It would have been
Oops.
that, but your signal is gone, I think.
Oops, I'm back.
Yeah. So okay. So now it's okay. It's okay now?
Yep, I can see you. I can hear you too.
So that what I'll do is I'll ask you to just whatever concluding remarks that you want to, because I'll tell you the thing is that because the next session starts at 6, I have to cut this live stream and start that live stream. Otherwise, Facebook thinks that you're not going to have that, and it says event cancelled. So I'll just have to do that. But you can still stay.
No, hats off to you. All I can say is, Vikram, kudos to you for bringing these aspects of this process out, for bringing these aspects of your mediators out, and full strength to you to continue this journey. I think a larger movement needs to hear these voices, or wants to hear these voices. Let's move away from need to wants to hear these voices. And thank you to you for taking that effort and creating the time to do this for the larger community. You probably have a whole bunch of pearls of wisdom from people like Danny and Ken and Sri Ram and everyone else from the larger from the globe that you are in touch with. I hope you're able to put this all together and disseminate it in an amazing way, because you really do have treasures with you.
No, thank you very much. And it's very nice of everyone to just take out time and talk about all this, because these, I mean, I think these thoughts are all there. It's just that because those things are not discussed in that way, there is a certain aspect of mediation which gets discussed, and this maybe certain things don't. And I actually feel that people have these things in them, that maybe they've been wanting to talk about it, and that opportunity doesn't happen maybe. So that I think is important. So thank you very much, Tara. You don't
Good
have to
luck.
go. You don't have to leave. I'll just cut the live stream and start the other one. But thank you very much.
Great.
This
It's the
session.
same link, right? So I
No,
can
no, no,
I
you're not.
can
You can stay. You can stay. You don't have to. You don't have to mediate. The meeting stays on. I just have to change. I'll tell you about the technical part. So thank you very much. I'll cut
Thanks.
this.
Thank
Yeah.
you.